Welcome to the Employee to Boss podcast, a podcast for everyone with an entrepreneurial spirit. I am joined by successful guests in all different industries and stages of business who will share what their experience was like transitioning from employee to boss. This is a resource for you if you're wanting to start a business, go all in on your side hustle, get to the next level in your thriving business, or just hear what it's like taking the leap to becoming your own boss. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the owner of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast production agency specializing in editing, marketing, and strategy. Let's dive into today's topic. Hey, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me on the Employee to Boss podcast. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love coffee and your business is all about coffee. And so we already have that in common. So I know I drank a lot of caffeine this morning. We're recording this at 3 p.m. and I feel like I need another cup, but we're going to get through this. How often do you, how many cups of coffee do you have a day? I just have to ask.
You know, I only have 2. 3 if it's like a really intense day and I need a little extra comfort, but I try to limit myself.
Yeah.
I've seen as time's gone on, I've just noticed a greater impact on everything. Sleep, anxiety, I don't know, all the stuff with my caffeine consumption. So I try to limit it.
I love that. Yeah.
So not that much.
Yeah. No. So I'm starting a new podcast too. It's called the Podcast Cafe. And so I'm talking to podcasters about their podcast journey. And the first question I'm obviously asking them, since we're in the podcast cafe, is what is their go-to coffee order? And since you're all about coffee, I'm going to bring that question into this episode. So what's your go-to?
I keep it simple. I just drink a 6-ounce Americano.
I love
2 shots of espresso, a little hot water, a little cream.
Yeah.
Sometimes no cream. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like to taste the coffee. I don't like sweets. I don't like a lot of syrups in my drinks. So
yeah. I love that. I go for Americanos, and everyone that I've asked in the podcast cafe has also said Americano. So it's very funny. I was expecting some complicated orders, but everyone's like, no, I just like an Americano with cream.
I know. I feel like the more you're in the industry, the less frilly stuff you actually like.
For sure.
The fancy stuff or the complicated drinks are good for customers, but I don't know anyone who actually works in the industry that's like, oh, I want all the flavors and all the things.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's kind of like you, and we'll get more into your story and how you started your coffee shops and everything like that. But I'm sure when you're in it, you have a deeper appreciation for the flavor of coffee and the roasting process. And you kind of know more about it. So that's why you can appreciate it more. But yeah, I'm excited to learn more about that. But why don't we get started by you telling us more about who you are and what you do?
Cool. I am Rebecca. I have 3 coffee shops in Seattle. Was 4. I just sold one today, actually.
Oh,
was
congrats.
The closing date. So weird timing on this. So 3 cafes and a roastery, and then a wholesale business as well. So I supply coffee all over the city to anyone who wants it. So other cafes, restaurants, Amazon campuses. Yeah, anyone who reaches out, colleges.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. What are your 3 coffee shops called?
They're all called Armistice Coffee. I have one in Eastlake Union and then one in Roosevelt.
Very cool. I've been to the one on Eastlake and I love that one. The vibes are great. I usually go to, because I work from home, so I go to coffee shops to get some work done and just to see other walls than just the 4 that I live in. And so that one is nice because it's open air almost. And I'm
that was my first one. I think that's my favorite one too.
Yeah, no.
There's something about it that's just very calming for me, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love it.
I like it.
So if anyone's in Seattle, definitely go check those out. But I'd love to hear about your journey from employee to boss. So how did you become an owner of 3 coffee shops?
What a journey it's been. So I started working in coffee in 2009. I had left college, didn't graduate, left kind of abruptly. I was going to school in Kirkland at a small Christian university. Didn't work out. No hard feelings. Yeah. But I needed a job, and there's a coffee company in Seattle called Cafe Ladro that you're probably familiar with. They have locations all over the place. I think they maybe only had 8 or 9 back then.
Okay.
Now they have like, I don't know, there's a ton of them.
So many.
20.
I feel like every time I look
They're
for a coffee
everywhere.
shop, they're right there.
I know, yeah, they grew really quickly. So my sister-in-law was the assistant manager of one of their locations, so she got me an interview, and that was kind of my first little intro into working in coffee. I'd always been on the consumer side for since I was like 14. I started drinking coffee. So yeah, I just kind of needed a job, got a job, and didn't really expect much out of it. It was just kind of tiding me over while I figured out what to do with my life. And but I don't know, I just kind of realized that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And yeah, I don't know, I fell in love with the cafe community and the people I was meeting, and just seeing what you can build for other people and seeing relationships that you can build and how you can bring other people together just from being a barista. And that's not even owning a cafe, right? That's just working in one.
Yeah.
And I just really loved it. So stayed in the industry, tried to leave a few times. I did like EMT school, nursing prereqs, all the things, and eventually just ended up working at a company called Zoka. You've also probably heard of them.
Yeah.
They have a few locations. So I managed their Kirkland location for quite a few years, and then also ended up managing their Tangletown location in Seattle. For my last year with the company, I was doing both of those stores. After Zoka, I just kind of felt like my time there was up. You know, sometimes you just know when it's like, I don't know. I've gotten all I can out of this place. I feel like I've given it everything I can. I moved on to another local company called Fonte Coffee downtown, and I was their director of retail operations. They had a couple of cafes at the time. They have some more now as well. And I worked with them for a few months before I realized that I just really didn't want to work for anyone anymore. And I don't know, there was something about it. I just didn't feel super supported as someone in management, and I didn't feel like I was given the space to advocate for myself or my employees. And at a certain point, you either just leave the industry or you do your own thing. Yeah, so I was like, I don't know, I gotta do it. I gotta open my own. Started looking at retail spaces and ended up signing 2 leases back to back on 2 spaces that weren't built yet. So new construction, new apartment buildings. Like I said, Eastlake was first, and then my Roosevelt one came a year later. So that was kind of, in short, how I got from point A to point B.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
What was it about? I know you worked your way up from barista to management to now owning your own coffee shops, but what was it about the management part that made you feel ready to open your own? Like, what inspired you to take that step into your own store?
I think when you're in management in coffee, it's just a low ceiling. And so we all have a catalyst, right? Sometimes it's a positive catalyst, sometimes it's a negative catalyst. We all have something that forces us into the next phase of our life, whether we like it or not. Sometimes we welcome it and sometimes we resist it, but either way, change happens. And for me, it was more the negative experiences of managing for other people. And maybe that's a me problem. Maybe I just don't do well for other people. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I don't like authority. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't think that's it. But there was something about the places I was working where I just really felt called to do my own thing and kind of be the boss that I didn't have, I guess.
Yeah.
Create a space that I hadn't experienced in the industry. I will say that in managing, you kind of think you know what it takes to own a business, and when you actually like take that step and open your cafe, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And it is very humbling, and you'll be humbled quickly. Had I known that, I honestly don't know. Maybe I would have been a little more hesitant to open one. But I think just assuming that I knew exactly what it took to run a business was enough. You know, I assumed that was enough to own a business. Very different. Very different worlds that you're in with that. So
yeah, I mean, sometimes ignorance is bliss when it comes to that. I think, you know, for entrepreneurship, there's really those people who overthink it before they get into it and hold themselves back, and then there's people who jump into it with that I'll figure it out mentality, which seems like is what you had. So, and I totally agree with you, because whenever I was in the past working for people, I had this mentality too where it was almost like, sure, I could do this, but like, what's the point? I don't know. I'm stubborn sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, what's the point? Or like, I was working with a corporate company a couple years ago, and there's so many limitations to what I could do. I would have these ideas, but it would have to be run by like 20
12
people.
people.
Yeah, and I was like,
it's insane.
what's the point? It's like,
Yeah, and then it's gonna get up there and they're gonna be like, oh.
Right.
And then, you know,
Right.
it's just, I don't know.
exactly. So by starting your own thing, even though it is hard at times and it's challenging, of course. I mean, you have a team, you have multiple shops, you have to manage multiple people who then manage other people. There's a lot of complexities to entrepreneurship, but I think even the worst days are better than the good days in working for someone else.
They are. They definitely are. And it can be really challenging to remember that and kind of hold on to that mentality, and like you get sucked into the bad days or the stress and all the stuff. Like the stress never ends when you own a business. It's always there. Your tolerance for it just goes up.
Yeah.
It doesn't really it gets easier because you learn more.
Yeah.
But not because the job itself is getting easier, right? Like you're growing, and because of that growth, you're able to handle things better.
Yeah.
But I still have days where, you know, it's so overwhelming. I can't even, I freeze for a second. I'm like, how do I prioritize everything?
Yeah.
When everything's a priority, like everything is a number one priority, right? And it is just really important to remember that even though I'm feeling more stress in this situation than I would maybe working for another coffee company, it's worth it. It's just so much better than being limited.
Definitely.
I don't like restrictions. I don't do well with stuff like that. And, you know, I don't know at what capacity you were in the corporate world for the coffee industry. And I think kind of the food and beverage industry in general, the ceiling's pretty low for how high you can go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get capped pretty early, even in management. You know, it's like, okay, then what? You know, if you work for a bigger company, maybe you'll be a district manager someday, but even then, probably not. You know, a lot of companies hire externally for that kind of stuff. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally could see that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Are you from Seattle originally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Seattle area. I grew up like 40 minutes outside of the city.
Okay.
In a little area called Monroe.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah. Farm country.
Yeah. Cute. And it's like, I feel like there's stuff popping up over there too. I feel like I'm hearing more about Monroe more. I mean, I've only been here for 4.5 years, which I say only, but like it's a big
long
state.
time.
That's a lot. There's a lot in Washington. So
that's fair. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah. But when I moved up here and I had to name my business, like the culture of coffee was so vibrant everywhere. And so that's kind of where I came up with the name of my podcast or the name of my business. And so definitely when you were first getting into the world of coffee, were you already like a fan of it, or like what was your relationship to this industry already?
I mean, before actually working in the industry, it was just me going and getting coffee after work in high school. I worked at a sub shop, and there was a Starbucks across the street, and I was friends with the barista. She was friends with my older brother, so I knew who she was. And there was just something about like going over there and getting my drink, same thing every day after work, and saying hi to her, hanging out for a little bit. I don't know. That was like my time to myself. When it was just like my little community and something that I did after work to help me kind of unwind, even though I just worked at a sub shop and I was 15. I was stressed.
Yeah, life is stressful.
Yeah, I was homeschooled. There's a lot going on. And that was kind of like, it just felt like a natural step to like work or try to work in the coffee industry. And like I said, my sister-in-law, Erin, hooked me up with an interview. And yeah, then I was on the other side of the counter, and I was the one creating the community. Mm-hmm. And that's a really special position to hold. And I think it can be underrated, you know, like you don't realize the opportunity you have when you're behind the bar. Definitely. You're not just I mean, for a lot of people, you are just making coffee and you're going home and you're paying your bills and you're in school. And I think that's great. You know, it's a great stepping stone job while you're doing whatever else you want to do. But for me, it was just kind of the realization that, like, I'm the first person that a lot of people talk to. I have the ability to influence their day positively or negatively. You know, if I have a bad attitude, there's a chance I'll ruin their day, you know?
Right.
And so just having the opportunity to like be a bright spot in people's lives felt really special to me. It still feels really special to me. And the spaces that I created are kind of geared towards bringing community together, and it's been really cool to just kind of see the friendships that have formed within my cafes from just customers who are there every day, and like business opportunities have come about because of that, or you know, people are running their companies from my cafes and holding their meetings there, and they're bringing other customers into things. Like, it's just really cool to see that experience just continuously grow.
Yeah.
And to be the one that gets to foster that is really unique, I think.
That is.
And I love it.
I love
Yeah.
that for you too. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, cafes are really all about community, and you never know who you're going to
Mm-hmm.
meet in there. But I interviewed someone else for the podcast. Her name is Rachel Morgan. She's a retail sales coach. And so she goes into places like coffee shops and helps them
Mm-hmm.
coach their employees on how to make sure that you are giving your customers good customer service, because that is a
Nice.
part where, yeah, if you don't give good customer service, like there are a ton of coffee shops and yours could be the favorite just based on obviously the quality of the coffee and the snacks and all those fun pastries,
Yeah.
but also how you make the customers feel, definitely creating
Yeah.
regulars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tell my employees that all the time. Like, I'm proud of my product. I
Yeah.
think my coffee is really delicious. Obviously biased, but like even just from feedback from customers, you know, I I think it's really good. I'm proud of it, but I still put more emphasis on customer service than the coffee. Like, they prepare it really well, and I am pretty stringent with how they're trained and how they're, you know, making every drink, but customer interaction is always the most important thing. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you can have the best coffee in the world, but if the person serving you has a bad attitude, you're probably not going to go back there. It's not going to be worth it to you when you're paying a premium. And, you know, it's a high-end coffee shop. It's a high-end product.
Definitely.
I want like the whole experience to be, you know, positive. So yeah, it's really important.
It is, yeah. And so when you opened your first coffee shop, you said
Mm-hmm.
you signed two leases and
Mm-hmm.
then you opened them a year apart from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Did you already know who was going to be working there? Like, did you have connections from your past jobs of who you wanted to be your employees?
I had one
Wow, okay.
connection. And I mean, I had a ton of connections. I just had one person who was like, yes, I want to work for you whenever it's open. And we met at Fonte, and he's one of my closest friends now. He ended up working for me until last November. So from 2018 until last year,
Wow.
he was with me. And yeah, other than that, I don't think I hired anyone from my past coffee experiences at all.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's better to have fresh people.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how'd you go about finding them and then training them? I know that a lot of the listeners, even if they're in a service provider or like
Yeah.
online space, like hiring's always an idea. And I think
Mhm.
hiring for personality and quality is important. So can you share some tips on that?
Yeah, I mean, with hiring, I used to use like Craigslist for the most part. Now there's a website called poached.com, I think. Poachedjobs.com. And it's for industry, food and beverage industry. And you can just kind of select like, I'm hiring or looking for a job in a cafe or a restaurant and management, whatever. I want to be a host, I want to be a server, and you can like really hyper categorize what you're looking for. That's always a really great place for me. I always get a ton of resumes, a lot of really great resumes. And then, you know, from there, it's kind of just the interview process. I don't You can have 20 years of coffee experience, but if your personality is just not what it needs to be, like if you're not, you know, present enough or upbeat enough, that trumps experience, right? A lot of times I'd rather hire someone who doesn't have coffee experience because you're not taking all the bad habits with them and trying to like reprogram their brain. Like you're just teaching them how you do it, and that's the only frame of reference they have for this job. If you have someone who has a ton of experience from 5 different coffee shops in Seattle, then you just don't really know if they're going to be open to doing things a different way. They might be so stuck in their ways. It's just important to sit down with people and have a conversation. I prefer kind of informal interviews. Obviously, I ask like a handful of important questions, but in general, it's just kind of a conversation about who they are and what they're passionate about in life and what are their long-term goals. What do they enjoy about, the cafe community and what brought them into the coffee world. Those are like kind of what we're doing here. Yeah. It's the same style that I do when I'm interviewing people and just kind of getting a feel for who they are. And yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
You can't figure anything out about a person on paper.
No, you really can't.
You really can't.
No.
So yeah, you just gotta sit down with them and chit chat.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm sure that the vibe of your coffee shops is a lot of your vibe, right? Like you are the brand, you're the community, like you're the community builder. Yeah. So when you were thinking about hiring people, mm-hmm. I'm sure they had to mesh well with you, but what else did you tell them about like the culture of your coffee shops?
I heavily focused on the community aspect and the community service. That the whole culture of my shop is like trying to create this atmosphere of inclusivity and, bringing people together, engaging with people. It's not just what can I get for you? Have a great day. It's like, how are you? What are you up to today? What do you have going on? Like you talk to them like you've known them forever, and they're going to love that. You're instantly making a connection. And you never know, like that could turn into your next best friend or, boyfriend or girlfriend or business partner. You have no idea what you're building when you're just having these small micro interactions with people. So I emphasize that for sure. Culture within the company and how people kind of get along behind the bar, like the coworkers that you have is also obviously really important. Just kind of emphasizing that like you're all there doing the same job and you're all on the same team. No one is hired as just a barista. No one is hired as just a cleaning dish person. No one is hired as, the person who takes orders. You all do all of it, and you're all going to have times where you're maybe doing more of this and less of this, and that's just kind of how it goes. But that's how you have like a cohesive group of people,
Yeah.
You're all experiencing the same things at the same capacity. And that's really important for just kind of building community behind the bar, within the company. It's just as important as building community outside.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What are some things that you've set up in your business to make sure it's scalable? I'm sure, lots of processes.
Lots of processes. I think most businesses can be scalable if you start with that mindset, right? Like if you're in it and you're like, I just want one coffee shop, I'm not really going to focus on creating like really strict systems and that kind of stuff because I'm here, I work here every day. Maybe I have 1 or 2 other people working for me and that's fine. But then when maybe you get an opportunity to open another location and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't say no to this. This is fantastic. That's where you get hung up when you realize like, because I don't have systems here, I'm doomed over here, right? So just from the beginning, you should go into it with the mindset that you want growth. You want scalability. Even if you really don't think you do, act as if you do, because that's what's going to be the forcing function that creates, your SOP, your operating procedures, standards for like food and drinks and syrups and behavior behind the bar, all that kind of stuff. And so, because I signed 2 leases at once, I was kind of forced into that without even having to think about that. But a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest doing it that way. Yeah, so I think it's just really important to like operate on the assumption that you're going to scale your business.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah. I like that mindset to go into everything. Was there a reason you signed 2 at once? Was it just like, you're like, I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
Excuse me. They were just really great spots.
Okay.
it really was like, I don't want to miss out on this one just because I have this one. It was my Roosevelt store is by the light rail station, which wasn't open at the time. And So just kind of seeing like how the neighborhood was going to grow and accessibility to that neighborhood, how that was going to grow as well, was really enticing. And it was a beautiful building. It wasn't done yet, but we had their 3D renderings where the design firm kind of does like a little drawing
Yeah.
thing of what it most likely will look like
Yeah.
in the end. It's pretty close representation. Yeah, I just was really drawn to both spaces. They're both really like airy and bright. All the doors and windows slide open at both of them. So during the summer, spring, summer, there's just a lot of airflow and you have people coming in from all sides, and it's just really, it's a vibe. You know, I don't
love
like
it.
to say that, but it just is. There's something about it that's just really cool. And I lucked out. I have amazing landlords. I'm so grateful for them. They were great to work with from day one and still are. So,
I
you
love
know,
that. That's
I don't
amazing.
know. I wanted
It
them
all worked
both,
out.
so.
It all worked
Yeah,
out. You're like, why
it
not
worked
both?
out. Yeah.
No, that's so funny. I refer to everything as a vibe, but I have a friend who is very Gen Z, and she's like, people don't say that anymore. And I'm like, people don't say vibes
Yeah.
anymore? I don't know.
Yeah.
I will.
I'm 35. I don't know what people are saying. Okay, I'm old. I'm old and I'm tired.
It's so funny. No, my Gen Z friend, she's like, it's not a vibe. And I'm like, it is a vibe. Everything's
Yes,
a
it
vibe. No, that's so funny. So I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you kind of just went all into it.
Yeah.
What are some things that you're doing now to kind of remove yourself from being in the day to day of like not being a barista? Because that is not scalable, obviously. I mean, that'd be
No,
hard.
it's not. It's not. You can't be a full-time barista at two places. You can try, and I did. Oh man, it didn't work. What did I do? It really just comes down to hiring people that you can trust
Mhm.
and building that foundation from day one. So the same mentality of like going into opening a cafe with the idea that you're going to scale. Go into hiring someone with the idea that they can replace you. Even if
Mm-hmm.
that's not their intention, even if it's not your intention. You always want someone who can do your job for you, and if you're lucky, you'll find someone who can do it better. Just because I own a business does not mean that I'm the best person to do absolutely everything. We all have strengths and weaknesses. There are things that I just don't like doing. Find someone that's better at these things than you, and trust them. Delegate, let go. I'm me to me. These are the
You to me too. I need to
conversations.
hear this.
Yeah, no, it took me years. I've been in ownership since 2018. And gosh, it took so long for me to realize that like letting go and letting other people do things for you is not a failure. It's not a weakness. It's you creating space for growth
Hmm.
because you can't do everything. No one can. It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think
Yeah.
that's great. And I mean, even in online businesses, like I'm a podcast manager, like there's going to be a time where I can't edit every single podcast I'm working on. And I have a
Exactly.
hard time with that. I really do.
Hmm.
But that's kind of what I'm trying to
Yeah,
get
like
through.
it's something that you created, right?
Yeah.
Like these cafes or like your podcast business, everything from floor to ceiling, inside it out is a part of you. It's one of the most vulnerable things I may ever do with my entire life is creating this company because it's parts of me, it's my aesthetic, it's my passion, it's what I want for my future, it's what I want for my community. Like you're just putting it all out there, and everyone on planet Earth has access to it. And that's terrifying and humbling. And it's just really important that you learn to, just kind of let go and trust that like you don't have to hold on so tight and control everything. It's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And it can be very humbling. It can be.
It is. Oh,
Especially
it
when
will
you
be.
like,
It's not it can be. It will be
yeah,
forever.
right.
And so you know what? People are going to hate it.
Yeah.
People are going to love it and people are going to hate it. They're
Hmm.
going to think you're the best and they're also going to think you're the worst.
Hmm.
And that's what you get for putting yourself out there, right? Like there's two sides to it. You're like, "Hey everyone, I created this really amazing thing. I want to share it with you." That does not mean they're going to enjoy it. Everyone has a platform. these days. There's Yelp, there's Google. They'll just rip you apart.
Oh, I'm sure.
And you have to learn how to be like, you have to learn to not take that personally and separate from that. And if you get hung up on all those little things, it's the same idea of letting go of control. You also have to let go of that. Just let it roll off, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Did you have a mentor through this whole process?
Not too much. No, I had people that I like relied on.
Hmm.
Not really mentorship, but just like people with experience that I could ask questions here and there. I had help with like the construction phase of things. That was one thing that like I didn't know anything about, and honestly, I still don't know. Like building out a space that from scratch is a whole nother thing. A lot of people don't have that opportunity either, right? The buildings get built and then retail sits vacant for a year. We were there when there was no building at all. And that was kind of a big learning curve. My partner at the time is a restaurant owner and had built some restaurants, so he was a big resource for that
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, there's always people who could do things better and have different knowledge. And
Oh, yeah.
just like you were saying, we can't do everything. And as a coffee shop owner, I would be shocked if you knew things about construction, honestly. That's so different, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like now I can build or fix anything.
Right.
But if I had to like step into a construction site and manage a construction team and tell them like put the sink here and this drain here, and I could not be me.
No, no.
No. There are people for that for sure.
Right.
And it's worth paying them.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
I live in an apartment, and
Same.
like moving to a house, my friends who are buying houses,
Mm-hmm.
the difference between renting and buying, like, good for them, but also I cannot figure out how to fix anything, and that would be up to,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, there's pros and cons to both, but I feel like it's
There's
the same
pros
with
and
business.
cons.
Yeah.
And no, really, I owned a house for a few years and I just recently moved back to the city, and I learned so much about how to build a fence and how to I don't know, fix anything, do
Yeah.
anything. It's wild. It's cool.
Yeah.
Like it's fun to have the opportunity to learn that kind of stuff. I had my East Lake Cafe flooded the other night, and it was like this
Oh my gosh.
almost catastrophic situation.
Wow.
Thank God it wasn't. But I was getting ready for bed, and the property manager called me and was like, "There's a leak in your space. It's leaking into the garage." And I was like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make a lot of sense."
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, it's like us, like there's water spraying." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I like rush over there.
Yeah.
It's 3 miles down the road from me. And for hours, this water line had just been spraying water, and it was like up to my ankles and my
Oh.
whole like back bar, every cup, every canister, my air fryer containers full of water, like to the brim. Electrical sockets sprayed with water. I was like, "Oh gosh."
Oh my
how
God.
how do you recover from this
Right.
in this economy?
No, literally, though.
And it ended up not being nearly as bad as it could have been.
That's good. Wow.
But I was there till like 1:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
shoveling water into drains.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's probably something you never thought that you would be dealing with in
And I
your
learned
life.
so much about water lines that
Yeah.
night and how to fix them. So
Right.
I'm always grateful for the catastrophes that happen.
Yeah.
Because, teachable moments are important at any phase of life. So,
Always, always. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it never happens again, but now you know what to do.
yeah.
Now you know what
Gosh,
to do.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Every
Crazy.
night I go to bed and I'm a little nervous. I'm like, okay, what what if it happens again?
Right. No, I mean, it was raining so much the other day. It was crazy. So hopefully that was
Yeah.
just what caused it or something like that.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows? Oh, well, I've really loved everything that you've shared so far about owning your coffee shop, expanding it, running your team, building that company culture, and having it as a place for community. Is there anything else you want to share before we start wrapping up this episode?
I don't think so. I just think it's important to encourage people that, even if it seems impossible, if I can open a coffee company and grow a coffee company, you can. I was kicked out of college and still figured it out. And sometimes it's important to just take the leap. The worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work and you go back to what you were doing before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And success isn't measured by those things, right? Like, I don't know, I'd rather try something and have it fail than just spend my life not trying it, right? And at the end of the day, we only get to be on this planet for one little blip of time, so you may as well make the most of it.
Absolutely.
I think that's
Absolutely.
really important.
I think so too. I love that. That's a great way to wrap up this episode.
Thanks.
I have one more question for you, and this is
Hmm.
the question I ask every guest of mine. I would love it
Yeah.
if you could share 3 action steps for the audience to take to move forward after this conversation. So, like I was telling you, the reason I asked this is because so many people consume so many podcasts, and it's sometimes
Yeah.
hard to take action when you
Yeah.
have so much information being fed at you. So,
Uh-huh.
I would love to hear, how are you going to challenge the audience this week?
Ooh, challenge the audience. I like this. Okay. One thing that I would encourage anyone who's even thinking about going out on their own, branching out, doing something, reach out to someone like me or like you, someone in your respective industry. Find a person, cold call them, send them an email, and say, hey, can I sit down with you for an hour? Can I have an hour of your time to ask you some questions? That is the first step, I think, for kind of opening up your mind to the possibility that you can do the thing that you want to do. Connecting with other people who have done it successfully is really important and helps you feel less alone. So, step one, find someone, reach out to them, ask questions, ask the dumbest questions you can think of. They're not dumb. Some of the questions I'm still asking people, I'm like, okay, Rebecca, should you be doing this? Shouldn't you know this by now? Doesn't matter. Step two, I would say write down like your top 3 goals in starting your own thing. So, like, what do you hope to achieve from it? What's one thing now that you know you're successful at and know that you can successfully do within your company? Like me, I knew that I could successfully manage people. There's a billion other things I don't know, but I'm really good at that, and that's something I can hold on to. So just find these little things that you know that you're good at and that you feel would add value to the world, and write them down. Write them down and read them back anytime you're discouraged. I have a list of things. It's so stupid, but I have a list of things that I'm proud of myself for achieving in life. And it sounds so cheesy, but I wrote them down, and if I'm having a bad day, I go back and I read my stupid little
I
list.
love that. I love
That
that.
actually isn't stupid at all. It's really important.
Yeah.
So that, and then I think number 3 is to just give yourself grace. I think it's really important to give yourself grace and forgiveness, and just kind of understand that these things are not easy to do. And there will be really challenging moments. There will be moments where you feel like a failure. There will be moments where I just closed a shop. I sold one of my shops. That doesn't feel good, right? No one wants to open a shop so they can close it. But you got to give yourself grace and say, it is what it is, and that's okay, and life goes on.
Yeah.
And that's what I have for you today.
I love those. Those are 3 great steps. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And
Sure.
yeah, where can people come and connect with you, either at your coffee shops or online?
Mhm. Instagram, Armistice Coffee is my Instagram handle. That's a big one. You can kind of stay privy to events, new menu items. It's a great way to reach out to me. I'm the one who is on there answering the messages. You can come to any of my shops, Eastlake, Roosevelt. I'm at the Roosevelt one every single day roasting. I'm the roaster for the company, so that's kind of my main gig at the moment. The roaster is in the cafe with bar space around it, so you can come sit and hang out, ask questions about roasting or anything, or just not talk. That's fine too.
Get some work done, whatever you need.
Get some work done. Yeah. Yep.
I love that. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'll put both of those in the show notes, as well as the different locations that you have. Do you run your own
Cool.
social media, or do you have someone doing that for you?
I have a friend of mine. That's
Nice.
actually one connection that came with me, but not on a cafe level.
Yeah.
But he worked at Zoka with me, and he does all my social media stuff.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work,
I
social
couldn't. I'm
media.
not a creative person in that realm.
Yeah,
I could not.
yeah, no. Well, I love your Instagram, so he's doing a great
Thank you.
job.
Thanks. I'll tell him. His
Yeah.
name's David. He's awesome.
Oh, go David. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining me. I've learned a lot from you,
you.
and I know the audience is going to do the same.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.